It's time for the Coach Groves Show, where we sit down with the head coach of the Darlington Tigers football team and talk about all things Darlington School football. Now we go live to Matt Davis and Ian Griffin, who are standing by with Coach Wayne Groves.
Well, I guess if we want to get technical, we're sitting here rather than standing, but we are with Coach Groves, and this is the Coach Groves Show. We had a 1-week hiatus last week because of the bye week, but we're back. We're with the coach. We're talking some Tigers football, and we're getting ready for another Friday night. So how you doing, Coach? Good to see you, man.
Doing well. It's a good week. Good to come off a bye week and gain some momentum working for Whitfield this week, but we're ready to go and ready to talk some Darlington Tigers football.
Well, we're ready to get back to the regular routine. It felt a little weird last Wednesday not getting together and doing the show, so we're glad to be back. And we got a lot of ground to cover because, there was a 4 OT thriller victory that the Tigers picked up since we last talked. So I thought that'd be a good place for us to start, Coach. But obviously tons of obstacles to overcome. Fought tooth and nail, your guys did, to get the game last week. I know everybody was extremely exhausted at the end of the night. I saw you at the end of the night. I think at one point you mentioned you may just sleep at the stadium. It took a lot to get the job done, but you guys did. So just tell us what your message was to the team after the win. That was exciting.
Yeah. Well, so, after the game and, one, I just told them, just how proud I was of the team, just how proud I was of their effort. It's just so many highs and lows in that game, so many ups and downs, had a couple opportunities to, kick a field goal, extra point to win it before we actually did. And, things didn't go our way at times. Things went our way at times, but I was just so proud of how our kids just stayed focused. And they just play with a never quit, never surrender, never back down mentality. And it's always, the next play or the next guy up. And, I was just so proud of them for that. And it's really inspiring to watch them play that hard and be that dedicated and just to keep coming and attacking folks and it ultimately come out with a win.
Absolutely.
Well, and I do want to say this, man. I'm going to pay you a compliment. I know you'll probably deflect it because you're a humble guy in that nature. But it's often said that a team takes on the personality of their coach, and you've been preaching that, just what you said, since day one. So I think that's where it starts. So you've done a great job, and it showed on Friday night.
Well, all our coaches, we have that same philosophy, we have that same mentality, and so hopefully that's what you want your team to do, is to take the identity that the coaches present, and so we do that, and it makes me proud to see them play and play that hard. When I first got to Darlington, I talked about, what I envisioned, and we'll talk about that a little later on how to win games. But that was one of those that definitely did that.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It was a gritty performance, and it was tough for me and Matt. I think that might have been one of the toughest Honeymoon Bakery player of the game choices we've ever had to make, because so many guys did step up. But we ended up giving it to Nate Konchesky, stepping in for Levi Duggan while he was injured, and just thought he played an outstanding game, made great decisions at the quarterback position, went down with an injury, putting your head on a touchdown. Talk about Nate's performance.
Yeah, well, I thought Nate ran the offense as good as he possibly could. Tons of poise, tons of confidence, and credit to him, limited time to prepare. He had not worked quarterback leading up to that for a couple of weeks. He hadn't worked quarterback at all, so he kind of got forced into a situation, and he stepped up and he did exactly what the team needed for him to do to win the game. And, just hats off to him. Hats off to our offensive staff too. Coach Loudermilk, Coach Reddish, Coach Abels, Coach Powers, Coach Privet. Those guys come up with a great game plan that help Nate be successful and use Nate's strengths to help the team. So, great job on the staff, great job for Nate, and then, whole team win, obviously. But, Nate being put in that situation, pretty special.
Well, Coach, on that note, we want to give you an opportunity to brag on your guys, because obviously we talked about Nate being the player of the game presented by Honeymoon Bakery. But again, there were just a lot of guys that contributed and made an impact on the game. So before we move on to our next topic, do you want to take a few moments here to talk about some of those performances and aspects of the game that you want to make sure that we get in before we move on?
Well, I'll say just overall team. And, I told our coaches on Sunday meeting, I said, do you realize how significant of a win that is for us with the team that was out there? We only dressed 28 players. We had 11 starters out. We played a team with 72 players. We had 8 of our players play both ways. They played over 130 snaps. Ridgeland only had one to two players that played both ways, and just some of the time. And so, We went into that game and we finished the game with third string quarterback, Jace Donaldson, third string B back, third string A back, third string linebackers, backup left tackle, backup wide receiver, backup strong safety, backup corner, backup long snapper, and we won in 4 overtimes. And it's just absolutely amazing, just a credit to our kids, our program, and our coaches. And we had 2 guys that got carried off the field in full body cramps after the game because they gave everything they had for that game and to win. And that's Bryson Jones and that's Lane Brasington. Those guys had to go to the ER after the game to get IV and fluids. Wow. And it kind of brings me back of the folks that were at the first meeting when I got introduced as Darlington head coach. I held that helmet up and I said, here's my vision of Darlington football. I said, that purple paw means pride. It means 115 years of football. It means blood, sweat, and tears. And my vision is to have kids totally exhausted, to win a game, to get carried off the field because they gave everything they had for their team, their teammates, and their coaches, and the school that they play for. And we're getting that. And so that's special. We're not the biggest, we're not the strongest, we're not the most depth, but our kids play so hard. And so that's a special thing. And as a coach, that's all you want. You want your kids to play hard. You want them to be bought into what you're doing. And, you got a chance every week if you can do that.
Well, Coach, you went from the filthy 40 to the tenacious 20 in a short amount of time, but they were certainly that last week. The game took place heading into a holiday weekend, as well as your first bye week last Friday. So what plan did you and your staff implement for balancing rest along with preparing for the next game of the season?
Well, on the schedule and the plan that I sent out to all the parents, I give them a calendar from April all the way to December of what we're doing with football. And so my philosophy has always been we labor on Labor Day. We come in, we practice at 8:30, we have a quick practice, and we get out of there. I told the team after the game on Friday and, kind of surprised the coaches and I guess the parents. I told them those first 3 games were almost like 5 games for us. With a 4 overtime game, I mean, that's way long. And then having to go to Mount Vernon twice and play those guys. So they earned a long weekend. And so I gave the coaches off Saturday. I gave the coaches off on Sunday and gave the players off on Monday. And we came back. Normally I like to practice 3 weeks on a bye week. I just felt like how the game had flowed and how the season has flowed so far, we needed a little extra time. So, we want to do 3 things. What I told them, I said, we want to get a head start on Whitfield. So we had 2 good practices, full padded practices last week, 2 good physical practices to get ready for Whitfield, and we were able to give the kids Thursday off. Coaches, we went and scouted on Friday. Coaches had off on Saturday, then we were back work on Sunday. But we want to give the kids some time off. We want to give a head start on Whitfield, and then we want to get some kids healed up. Right. Want to get some kids healed up, and so we feel like we used the bye week last week to do that, and then we started our Whitfield prep, kept it going on Monday, and it's been a good week.
This is the Coach Grove Show. We got one more question for you, Coach, here in this segment, and then we'll get ready for our first break. But quite a buzz after the game. You talked about how exhausted the kids were, the coaches were. We mentioned the broadcasters might have been a little bit tired after that game also, everybody in the press box. But, man, there was a buzz after that game. People were fired up as they were leaving. They were inspired by the performance that took place in the game and took that with them into what they moved on to next. So what was it like for you, Coach, after the game was over and you observed, the aftermath and the excitement that the fans had, that sort of thing, to be a part of that moment and see a gritty performance like that?
I think one of the coolest things for me is, I love to just sit back and just watch the kids interact with their friends and their friends be fired up and happy for them, to see the smiles on their face, to see them be able to hug their moms and dads and, get congratulated on a great performance. And that's what inspires me, to know that, I did my little part in all this. So these guys could have a great Friday night and a great experience. And, I just sit back and say, wow, I'm blessed to be able to do this and be able to lead the Tigers and lead such good young men.
Well, I feel like those fans brought their A game Friday night too, man. That was a charged up home crowd.
It was. It's been one of the better ones that we've had over the years. And we had a pep rally on Friday, and I challenged our student section, the bleacher creatures. I said, when they have the ball, you got to be as loud as you possibly can, and we have the ball, be quiet. But if you can make them use a timeout, you can make them jump off sides or false start. And they did that a couple of times in the game. So you probably saw me. I mean, I'm going to give them our student section a lot of credit and try to get them fired up in those key moments. But I thought that was really cool because they impacted the game. the fans and the bleacher creatures, they impacted the game. They helped us win that game. So that's pretty cool when that happens too.
Absolutely.
And you talked about it on this show. As a matter of fact, last week, kind of appealing to the fans to make sure to get out to the game and be a part of what was going on. And it's great to see that kind of response. The 12th man is the real deal. It really is.
Sure.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take our first break. We got plenty to come. You don't want to go anywhere. We're talking Tigers football with the head coach. Coach Wayne Groves is with us. We're going to be back with him after these messages. So we'll be right back.
Are you shopping for a new car, truck, or SUV? Riverside Auto Group has a location to meet your needs. Browse their selection online at riversideautogroup.com or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, Riverside Nissan in Rome, or Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Coach Groves Show. We're going to jump back into this segment, and we always kick the second segment of the show off highlighting the black shirts for this week. So, Coach, who are the young men that received the honor?
All right, on defense, he's kind of become our leader in the secondary, and he's a 2-year starter. And I thought last year he kind of cut his teeth and got a great taste of varsity football, but this year he is living and breathing it. And that's our free safety, Stuart Grigsby. He is basically our quarterback back there. We put a lot on him as far as making secondary checks and secondary coverage adjustments, and he's done a phenomenal job. And he played a really good ball game last week. So Stuart Grigsby gets the defensive black shirt. On offense. We had two guys. We had a split vote, and they both did a tremendous job blocking. First up front, our center, Bryson Jones, had a phenomenal game. He graded out really well and not many missed assignments, and he's really paving some holes for those other backs. And then Bodie Powers, obviously he carries the ball really well and he does a good job with the ball in his hand. But what a lot of people don't see is what Bodie does when the ball is not in his hands. I mean, he is a great blocker and he's a huge asset to our team. So Bodie Powers and Bryson both split that offensive black shirt. On special teams, a lot of crazy special teams play in that ball game, but key Jace Donaldson blocking the field goal, there in the overtime. So he gets the special teams black shirt for making that big play and that big contribution. And then simulation offense. It's a kid that's got this before, but he just keeps on working, and he's working his way onto the field, slowly and surely getting a little more playing time. But that's one of our DBs and wide receivers, Tristan Leeser. He got the simulation offense. He's out there busting his tail, and he's got a little more work this week on defense. So might see him out there contributing a little more on some special teams and defense. On simulation defense, my freshman defensive end, tight end, MJ Ralton. He's done a great job of getting over there. We never have to tell him to get in on simulation. If he's not in on offense, he gets in there and he contributes until it's time for him to come over on offense and get his reps at tight end or receiver. So for his efforts the last couple of weeks, MJ Ralton gets the simulation defense black shirt.
Fantastic. Always a favorite part of the show for sure. And Coach, we'll just kind of roll into our next question here on the program. But this next game up at Whitfield Academy over in Mableton, Georgia, which is kind of over near the Six Flags area, I guess you would say. Final non-region matchup before you get to that second portion of the season. I know a lot of people like to break the season down into three parts. You got your non-region, you got your region, and then hopefully at the end of the year, you get to the playoffs, that sort of thing. That's everybody's goal. But this is the last game before you get into region play. So what are the areas of improvement that you have most on your radar, most dialed in? Obviously, you want to get some guys back healthy, those sorts of things. But what's the focus right now going into this game in terms of just getting better and moving forward as a program?
Yeah. Well, one, we're trying to get healthy. We got 11 starters out right now, so that's number one. Two, we want to practice well to get our kids ready, but we can't do crazy stuff. We have to be smart about how we do, and we always have smart practices. We don't get kids hurt at practice. Next is, we want to make sure that, we're continuing making special teams a priority. We've had some new kids, because it's been a revolving door on some of those special teams. We've had to take a few days just to work on that, to make sure they know their responsibilities and assignments. And then we got to get better on defense in the form of defending screens. You know, we do drills I call Space Jam. We work on coverages, we work on fitting screens, leveraging the ball, and all that. And you know, 3 touchdowns against Ridgeland came off of not fitting screens right, and not space jamming like I teach, or missed tackles. And so that's been a priority. We got to get better at defending screens. And so those 3 things are what we've been working on.
I got a follow-up question to that I was just thinking about that as you described, you know, the situation in terms of getting guys back healthy. Obviously, we've had a few guys have been out for a few weeks, and you'll see them out there during warm-ups and stuff like that, kind of rooting guys on and kind of helping out and pitching in. What does that situation look like when you've got guys that can't play necessarily, but, you know, get in there and contribute in other ways?
Yeah, and we talked to the guys about that. You know, you may not be able to be on the field, but you can contribute and you can get this team going in other ways. You can be the best teammate, motivator, encourager. You know, if someone messes something up and they come off the field and maybe coach gets onto them, go put your arm around them. You know, say, hey, you got this. You know, encourage. You could be the best cheerleader on the sideline. You know, you can be the rah-rah guy. You can get the energy levels up. So that's what we try to preach to those guys. Even if they're not in there, they can still affect the game in different ways, and it could be through leadership and motivation. So they're doing a great job of that.
Well, Coach, anyone that was at the Lakeside a few weeks ago got to experience for themselves the level of fight and grit this Tiger squad has. If you were to describe this team to someone who has not seen them, what would you tell them?
Well, I hope they would see that, you know, our kids play with, you know, what I talk about, the never quit, never back down, never surrender mentality. And for me, that's what that Jolly Roger flag, that's what that black skull and crossbone flag represents to us in the team. And we talk about it all the time. It means we're an attack football team. Okay. We want to play with all gas, no break mentality. You know, no matter what happens, the most important play is the next one. You know, we're an option football team. We're a run first team. So we want to be physical. We want to make teams uncomfortable with how physical we play. You know, we want to execute our calls with purpose and belief, and then we want to do everything with amazing passion and energy. And hopefully that, you know, that's what our kids do. You know, I feel like they do, and hopefully other people say that as well.
Well, I was amazed. You couldn't have more emotional highs and lows in one football game than you had against Ridgeland. And that next play mentality is obviously there because, I mean, these are young men. They're emotional creatures, and it would have been easy for them to let, you know, a lot of those plays shake them up and not concentrate on what they needed to do on the next play. That never happened, not one time. Yeah. And there were some times where I know a lot of young men who would have rolled over and just laid down. Your team does not do that.
No question.
So, impressive.
And I just have to say, when you were going through the list there a second ago, I was hoping any minute now he's going to say, and everybody's got to be tougher than a $2 steak. I love that saying. Where did you get that?
I don't know. I heard that a long time ago.
Matt's been using it.
I've adopted it. I'll admit that, man. That's a good one. It is, because like I said a couple weeks ago, I've had a $2 steak. I think
they're tough.
It's pretty tough. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to put a wrap on this particular segment. We've got one more to go, and what we're going to do is we're getting ready for another game coming up on Friday night. The bye week is over. You guys have been getting prepared for a really tough Whitfield Academy team, a team that you're familiar with. And so we're going to talk all things of this matchup in the final segment of the show. So we're excited about that. But we do have to take a break and thank our sponsor for being here, but we'll be right back.
Are you shopping for a new car, truck, or SUV? Riverside Auto Group has a location to meet your needs. Browse their selection online at riversideautogroup.com or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, Riverside Nissan in Rome, or Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group.
And we're back here for a final segment with the head coach of the Darlington Tigers. Segment 3, this is the Coach Grove Show. And in this segment, we always break down the upcoming opponent, talk about that a bit. And Coach, we talked about, and my mom pointed this out. She said, "Go Tigers! Each game is becoming a unique adventure." So on that note, this is the 4th trip to Atlanta in that particular area. That we talked about the 2 trips down to Mount Vernon, then went back to North Cobb Christian, came back, had a home game, finally at home, 4 overtimes, and then you hit the road again. So you guys have become the ultimate road warriors, no question about it. So these kids are kind of used to this situation now. So that prevents a high level of adversity, opportunities for a young team to kind of come together, grow as a unit. So with that said, I know that's a mouthful, but in what ways do you think this group has matured throughout the adversity that they've faced so far with all the adventures that they've been through together this season?
Well, one, you never get stronger without adversity. And like my old roommate, that's the head coach at Pike County, Stephen Holmes, used to say, the tree doesn't grow strong if the wind doesn't blow. And so we welcome that. And hopefully we're going to get some guys healed up. But what that's done is it allows some opportunities for some young guys to step up and get, varsity experience they wouldn't normally get. They get extra practice reps that they wouldn't normally get. And so it's going to make us a little more powerful once we get back to full strength. And hopefully that's, sooner than later. But we want to be playing our best football once playoff time hits. And so that's the goal. I think that the adversity is definitely has been it's a negative, but also you turn it and make it a positive. And I think that's the positive of everything. So we're just going to keep it moving forward. Again, next man up and use it as an opportunity to grow.
Well, Coach, this is the 3rd installment in the series between the Tigers and Wolfpack in as many seasons. So there's a lot of familiarity here. You got the best of them last year. They've been a playoff team the last 8 seasons. So this is a really good program that you know a lot about. What do you think their main strengths are this season?
Yeah, well, one, they're well coached, and they have a deep roster. They have 66 players on their team. They're very solid. They remind me a lot of North Cobb Christian. Georgia High School Sports has Whitfield ranked, I think, number 6 in the state. So again, it gives us an opportunity to go on the road and compete and try to get some respect and be the top 10 team. And so that's kind of been our focus. That's what we've been trying to do. But it's going to be a tough task. They're a good football team. On offense, they've got a really good run game. They're about 64%, run, about 36% pass. They're 20 personnel, 10 personnel on offense. So you'll see, inside zone, stretch zone is their main play, followed by counter. They do a really good job with screen games, and they're really good with their quick passing game to get the ball out. On defense, you're going to see them in a 3-3 stack defense. Sometimes they'll get in a tight alignment, sometimes wide alignment. They play a lot of cover 3 and sometimes some too high. And then you get inside the 20 on them, they'll get to a kind of a 4-2 cover 3 look or cover 0, and then you'll get some blitz. So, they're a solid team. They're a solid opponent, and, we look forward to the challenge.
Absolutely. And, of course, one of the things that we always talk about in this particular segment, you kind of mentioned some of their strengths in your previous statement there, but let's talk about some of their guys. Obviously, I was looking at the roster earlier this week, and there were some familiar names from last year's team, so they got some experience. So tell us about some of their dudes.
Yeah, I'm really familiar with this team just because a lot of these guys we've played them for 3 years in a row now. So the guy that stands out on film one is the running back number 0, Mason Hollinshed. He's been a 3-year starter for him. He's senior, 6 foot, 190 pounds. He's one of the top running backs in the state right now. Quarterback Landon Ryan, again 3-year starter. He's a junior, 5'10", 180 pounds. Wide receiver number 2. He's the playmaker they try to get the ball to. That's Parker Shim. He's a senior, 5'9", 170 pounds. He is very dangerous with the ball in his hands. Best O-lineman, number 71, Josh Ellis. He's 5'10", 270 pounds. He's a senior. And then they have a good tight end, H-back, number 11, Luke Linder. He's 6'3", 220. On the defensive side of the ball, in that 3-3 stack defense, their right side end, number 53, William Dukes. He's a senior, 6'2", 215. He's the best one up front. Number 32, their linebacker, Will linebacker Thomas Dickey, 6'1", 215 junior. And then their best DB is number 5, senior John Durden, 5'10", 165 pounds.
Excellent. I remember a lot of these names
Oh,
from the
definitely.
last few seasons for sure.
So this is the roster. I was like, hey, I recognize these.
Yeah, I'm sure they look at our roster and see the same thing. There's a bunch of kids that have played for 3 years. We look at theirs, same thing. These kids are very familiar with each other. A lot of them know each other. So it'll be a good contest.
Smaller world this day too. I'm sure they can communicate with each other a little easier too.
We shouldn't be doing, the Tigers shouldn't be doing that. We should just be focused on us.
Right.
I'm sure some of that happens from time to time.
Yeah. Well, Coach, you got your work cut out for you against a top 10 team. What are the keys to leaving Mableton as the victors on Friday night?
Well, we want to control the tempo of the football game with our offense, number one. 2, I expect us to win the hitting game. 3, we got to take care of the football. And then, 4, we want to make big plays on special teams. And if we do that, we'll have a good Friday night.
Awesome, man. Well, last but not least, unless, Matt, you got something
I did want to
interject,
interject here because we're live on a Wednesday. You may be watching this by the time the game kicks off on Friday. It's too late. But, last week you appealed to the fans to come to the home game. Mm-hmm. You need them on the road, right?
Oh, 100%. The boys are going to feed off fans in the stands, and I know we have the live stream and all that, and that's great. But there's nothing like being there and supporting the team, being a factor in the ball game, and just letting the boys feed off of your energy in the stands, and it'll get them to play harder and longer and faster and all that good stuff. So we need you there. If you could possibly be there at 7:30 on Friday.
Not a bad drive.
Not at all. Not at all.
Just go to Rockmart. You'll miss all the Atlanta traffic. Come up through there and be in Mableton in no time.
Plenty of good places to stop and grab a bite to eat on the way too. Yep. Make a night of it. And when they get there, when the fans show up on Friday night, how the Tigers going to be dressed, man? I got to know.
All right, we're going to go white tops this week. We're going purple pants. It was good to us, at Mount Vernon, so we're going to keep that and roll with that this week.
Heck yeah.
Sounds
great.
great.
Be a great Friday night.
Well, this has been the Coach Grove Show. Any final comments that you'd like to offer the viewers today?
No, just get out and support the Tigers, and just keep supporting us. And all prayers are always accepted for the boys to get them back healed up, and that they play to the best of their ability. And the ones that are banged up, we get them back very quickly. So we'll take those prayers anytime we can get them.
Absolutely, and safe travels to everybody going to the game. So, all right, well, we are going to wrap up the program. Thanks for tuning in for this episode of the Coach Grove Show. It's time for Game 4 coming up in just a little bit. We're looking forward to it, but this puts a wrap on the program. We'll talk to you next week on the Coach Grove Show. Thank you for your time, Coach. We appreciate you, Beth.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of the Coach Groves Show. We invite you to join us again next week as we discuss all things Darlington football with head coach Wayne Groves. Go Tigers!